Hello, everybody. This is Gerald Salenti, and it's Wednesday, February 22nd, 2023. And we are very honored to have with us again the man of men who knows the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. I'll put him up against anybody, anywhere in America, Judge Andrew Napolitano, who fights for freedom, peace, liberty, and justice. Judge, thanks so much for being with us today on this February 22nd.
Pleasure to be with you, and forgive a little over-enthusiastic priest with Ash Wednesday ashes this morning.
Amen. And hey, women.
Deacon Salenti, where are your ashes?
You know, Judge, today is February 22nd. This is the cover of the Trends Journal, February 22nd, 2022, last year. From Ukraine war, from COVID war to Ukraine war to World War.
You know, when your control room person put that up a few seconds before we came on air, I thought that was this week's Trends Journal. That's a year ago predicting precisely where we are today.
Yep. And the bottom line, talk of peace prohibited. You're not allowed to talk about peace. And your article that's coming out tomorrow, War and the Constitution. Can the president fight any war he wishes? Can Congress fund any war it chooses? Are there constitutional and legal requirements that must be first met before war is waged? Can the United States legally attack any ally? These questions should be front and center in a debate over the U.S. involvement in Ukraine. Sadly, there's been no great debate. The media are mounting what the CIA is telling them, and only a few websites and podcasts, yours, mine, Judging Freedom, and others, among them the few, are challenging the government's reckless, immoral, illegal, and unconstitutional war. Reckless, immoral, illegal, and unconstitutional war. And where are the people? Where are the people standing up and fighting for our freedom?
You know, I'm mystified by this. Where's Bernie Sanders and AOC on the left? And where are our friends Rand Paul and Thomas Massie, the libertarians? I don't hear a peep from anybody in Congress. No one in the mainstream media, you and I and Lou Rockwell and people at the level in the media where we are. You just don't hear any serious debate about this. Reckless, because it's going to bring us to World War III, which will mean the destruction of millions, maybe tens of millions, the annihilation of millions of innocents. Immoral, because we have no beef with Russia. They haven't threatened us. They haven't come near us militarily. They don't pose a military threat for us. Illegal, because Congress hasn't declared war, because there's no legal basis for it to declare war. Unconstitutional, because the president can't do this on its own. Reckless, immoral, illegal, unconstitutional. Now, those arguments were made on Sunday at the anti-war rally in Washington, D.C., where you were one of the featured speakers, but you don't hear it. You don't hear it, Gerald. And I'm mystified. Where is the anti-war left and where are the anti-war libertarians in the Congress? They are silent. Why? Where's the German government, humiliated when the American Navy and CIA attacked it and destroyed the Nord Stream pipeline? Humiliated that Cy Chase, a single, dogged, determined, courageous, brilliant investigative reporter, beat the billionaire-funded mainstream media to the truth first. Who knows if Joe Biden even told the Chancellor of West Germany that he did it? But how could he simply accept it? They continue to blame it on Russia. The only person who told the truth in that affair was Vladimir Putin himself. It's disgusting. It's sickening. And every time we talk about this, every week, Gerald, it's a step closer to annihilation, a step closer to war. I don't want to be able to say I told you so, because when you and I say I told you so, it'll be too late.
Yeah. Biden, again, it's the current cover of the Trends Journal. And when you look at it, it shows you what a traitor Joe Biden is to the founding fathers. No foreign entanglements. F you, Washington. On President's Day, rather than being in America and honoring the founding fathers, Joe Biden says, screw you, Washington. Who are you? What no foreign entanglements? I'm going to Ukraine, giving them another $500 million to keep bloodying the killing fields. What's his name? Flynn. I think his name Flynn, a former worked for Trump.
Oh, General Flynn, the one that the FBI indicted because they didn't like what he said in a conversation.
Yeah. He was just reported in Gateway Pundit on Monday saying that Biden traveled to Ukraine 12 or 13 times in his last year as vice president.
Wow, that's once a month. What the hell for?
Yeah. Now we're going back to what, 2016?
Yes.
When was the coup? 2014?
Right.
So it's right after the coup. And remember Hunter Biden? Yeah, the drug addict, that Hunter Biden, that gets the job with Burisma Energy.
Yeah.
In Ukraine, and reportedly made $11 million.
Wow. Well, this is something, I'm not crazy about all these investigations. They can be witch hunts, but this one doesn't seem like a witch hunt. This is something Republicans in the House should investigate. If there were crimes committed, the statute of limitations has run, because those federal crimes have a 5-year statute of limitations. But nevertheless, the public has the right to know what was Joe doing there? What was he involved with?
Yeah,
if anything,
yeah,
in that time period. General Flynn is, in my opinion, correct. And I'm assuming, he's correct to say this should be investigated. I'm assuming he's correct on the number of flights. His last job in the military was as head of the Defense Intelligence Agency. That's another CIA, but it's exclusively military. So even though they snoop all over the place, he probably knows what he's talking about. He probably can back up what he said. If push came to shove, he probably could tell you the dates that Joe actually flew there, because his people would have that information. And because he was the vice president, he went with an entourage of security. So there'd be records of that level of movement of humanity accompanying and protecting him every time he went there.
Yeah. So what is Biden's great love for Ukraine? That's not my country.
Well, he can't answer this question. When he promised in his speech in Ukraine, right wherever he gave the speech, it looked like it was outside of a basilica or outside of a grand government palace. And when he made the same speech or a similar speech in Warsaw the next day, he provided all the aid that's necessary, quote, for as long as it takes, close quote. As long as it takes to do what? What is the goal of America spending $100 billion in Ukraine? Is it the removal of Russian troops from eastern Ukraine and Crimea? That is a militarily impossible goal to achieve. Is it the removal of Vladimir Putin from office in Moscow? That is another militarily impossible goal to achieve. The law requires that military goals be reasonable, clearly articulated, and attainable. So, Mr. President, what is your goal? He can't answer that. He'll give you some nebulous answer like defending freedom. Freedom? You're talking about Nazism in Ukraine? Freedom? He can't answer the question, Gerald. Neither can his people answer the question. There's an interesting piece on CNN.com this morning about fissures finally starting to show amongst Republicans. I'm not particularly a fan of Governor DeSantis of Florida. I think he's another big government Republican. However, he did say he supports zero aid to Ukraine for the reasons that you and I have been articulated. So he is the first, shall we say, top of the fold name Republican to come out and say that.
Well, that's good. But yeah, this is Biden, what he said in his speech over there. Quote, when Russia invaded, you ready? It was not just Ukraine being tested. The whole world faced a test for the ages. The whole world? They weren't threatening anybody. Quote, Europe was being tested. America was being tested. NATO was being tested, end quote. No, they're not testing anybody, right? Russia's not testing anybody. This is the same kind of crap they shoved out with the Vietnam War.
Correct.
The domino theory.
Correct. The Vietnam War, 500,000 American troops, 10% of whom came back in body bags. For what, LBJ? Your own vainglory because you wanted to be a wartime president? It was a criminal act on the part of the American government, just like our invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan under George W. Bush were criminal acts, both under false pretenses. LBJ made up the Gulf of Tonkin. George W. and Colin Powell lied about weapons of mass destruction. That makes them criminal because they're war crimes. The false delivery of a country into a war, fighting a war under false pretenses, is a war crime.
Oh, and how about NATO being tested? How about those war crimes? You forgot Libya? You want that guy Gaddafi out of there. We're going to destroy the richest country in Africa, where people had more benefits and rights than most people around the world. Oh, you forgot the NATO, what they did with a place that used to be called Yugoslavia? How about that NATO? How about that NATO going into Afghanistan and Iraq? How about that NATO? That NATO being tested? What? Tested so they could do more killing and murder? He goes on. Autocrats only understand one word. This is Biden. No, no, no. No, you will not take my country. No, you will not take my freedom. No, you will not take my future. Oh, no, you will not take my freedom? You mean in America, where you will get a COVID jab? If you don't, you can't live a free life. If you don't do what we tell you in the freedom of America, here, I'm going to lock down your business. We're fighting the COVID war. Freedom? What freedom are you talking about? How about this? Ukraine will never be a victory for Russia. Never, Biden said.
Well, that to me, I mean, it's not only reckless for humanity, it's reckless for him politically. I mean, he's making a promise that he is incapable of delivering.
Well,
I mean, but Putin has 350 to 500,000 troops that are about to swarm into Ukraine, and they will just march across the country, much like the Americans carpet bombed Japan and Germany at the end of World War II. And nothing will stand in their way, including their American advisors, including the American soldiers that are now shooting at Russians. Colonel McGregor advises that the HIMARS, that's that rather sophisticated system of missiles that we gave them, are physically located in Ukraine, but operated remotely by American troops in Poland. American troops are choosing the target and American troops are pulling the trigger. It's not an actual trigger. It's a bunch of buttons you have to press. Point is, it's American soldiers shooting at Russian soldiers. Putin told the U.S. ambassador to Russia, Russia reserves the right to shoot at the military personnel of any country where the personnel is in Ukraine and where that country is shooting at us. Makes sense. Could you imagine Chinese soldiers in Mexico shooting at us in Texas and us being afraid to shoot back? Putin is not afraid to shoot back. And he basically told that to the American ambassador. And that probably went in one of Joe's ears and out the other, because he wants a war. He wants what's coming. He thinks that will get him reelected.
Biden has voted and pushed for every war since he's been sucking off the public tit for 60 years. There's not a war that little lowlife didn't love. And again, this slime ball calls himself, you just got your ashes, a practicing Catholic. That's his words. He calls himself a practicing Catholic. You are the devout Catholic. What Catholic practices war and murder? How it's demeaning to what the Prince of Peace.
Correct. He uses Catholicism as a badge. I don't know what's in his heart, but there's nothing Catholic.
Murder in his heart.
Nothing Catholic. There's nothing Judeo-Christian. There's nothing even moral, whether you believe in God or not. There's a right or wrong in the world about slaughtering innocent Russian soldiers and extending a war. The United States had not entered this Ukraine war, it would have been over in a couple of months. Let's face it. The reason it's still being fought is because of American equipment on the ground, much of which is manned by American troops.
Again, the American troops are there because Lloyd Austin, our defense secretary, whose last job was sitting on the board of directors of Raytheon, the second largest defense contractor, had admitted that American advisors are in Ukraine, watching over the weapons that we've brought in there to make sure that they're being properly operated. He's admitted it. They're there. And what we're looking at here is nuclear annihilation if this doesn't stop. And I am so disappointed. Again, another friend of mine, it's great you were at the rally. Too bad too many people didn't show up. Our education system, this, blah, 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 blah. I'm so tired of hearing about that. All I'm saying to everybody listening, what are you doing? You know the facts of what's going on. What are you doing to promote peace? What are you doing to support? And we didn't really get into it, but I want to wrap it up with it. The Constitution and our Bill of Rights and how we should not be involved in these foreign entanglements. What are you doing? Each individual. Don't just talk about it. You better do something. That rally should have had 100,000 people. Absolutely. They had a rally in Munich on Saturday. Over 10,000 people showed up. Washington Post covered that rally. They didn't cover ours. How many people in America? 332 million people? And you get 4,000 people, 5,000 people to show up for a rally? That shows you the heart of America.
Yes.
Judge, in wrapping up, please go into your article here, because you say under the Constitution, only Congress can declare war on a nation or a group. The last time it did was to initiate American involvement in World War II.
Congress has, from time to time, given its power away to presidents. It's all unconstitutional. They let George Bush attack criminally Afghanistan and Iraq. They enacted the War Powers Resolution, which lets the president attack whoever he wants as long as he reports it to Congress. They've established a Congress within a Congress called the Gang of Eight, which is the chairs and ranking members of the House and Senate Intelligence Committees and the senior leadership of both parties and both houses, which allows the president to tell them things in secret, but requires them to keep the secrets to themselves. What kind of a democracy operates in secret? What kind of a democracy allows a secret war? What kind of transparency is that? Congress has given powers away to the president. Every time the Supreme Court looks at this, it says it's unconstitutional. So only Congress can declare a war, but they have to have a reason for it. They don't have a reason for it. They've given Joe, I don't mean to disrespect him, they've given the president a $100 billion slush fund. He spent half, he's wasted half of it already. It's a deplorable state of affairs, which comes from the absence of fidelity to the Constitution. The president doesn't follow it. The Congress doesn't follow it. What happens when they don't follow the Constitution? Death, debt, and destruction, the slow destruction of personal liberty.
You know, I think you summed it up what the country is. Or I shouldn't say the country, what Congress is. A gang of eight. A gang. They even call themselves a gang.
They do.
They're telling us the gang is in charge. And that's all it's become, a gang. And Biden is nothing more than the gang leader. This is terrible what's happened to this country. Yep. We have reposed the Constitution for safekeeping into the hands of those who ignore it. The consequences are debt, and the loss of personal liberty, you write. Again, if we don't unite for peace, we're going to die in war. United we stand, divided we die. And everybody listening, all I'm saying to you is, what are you doing? What are you doing personally to change this? And if you don't do anything, great. The worst will keep happening. It does not take a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority, keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men, said Samuel Adams. Now is the time for that irate, tireless minority to unite for freedom, peace, and justice, and the true American spirit. Because what Joe Biden did on President's Day, rather than honoring the presidents in the United States and celebrating that day with we the people, he goes to Ukraine to keep beating the war drums and bloodying the killing fields. He should be impeached just for that, as I see it. Thank you, Judge, for being here. And thank you for all that you do. And we'll see you next week.
Pleasure, Gerald. All the best.